Go. Hello, my friends. Hello, my life warriors. Wherever you are in the world, welcome to the Day In, Day Out podcast. Woo! Today on episode 269, I'm very happy to have Jim Edwards, friend from time before. He is the former chief editor of Insider, and he has written a book. Someone's getting multi-talented, I can see. Yes, his book is called Say Thank You for Everything, The Secrets of Being a Great Manager. How are you today, sir?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for having me on your podcast.
No, the pleasure's all mine. The pleasure's all mine. Before we started, I said we were talking about how long it's been since we've actually seen each other in person. And you were saying 2018. Hey, God.
Something like that. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
Pandemic obviously got in the way. You you moved out of London. Lots of things have happened.
Yeah, but this is the thing. You were in Crouch End, weren't you?
Near Crouch End. I'm in Wood Green.
You see, I was in Crouch End. We were like literally just a stone throws away.
We could have walked to each other's houses.
Yes, indeed. Because I was just like a place called Avenue Road, just near the clock, near the clock tower, near the church.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, near the King's Head.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Now, I have to ask. No, you've you have had a long, illustrious career in the realm of media, but what made you decide to get into doing a book of all things?
Well, I had truthfully, I had been at Insider for 10 years.
Yeah.
And towards the end, usually at the end of every calendar year, I sort of take a quiet moment with just on my own with myself and ask myself, what do I really want to do next year? Like, do I want to continue doing the same job, or should I do something else? And the answer to that question almost every year was, no, I'm going to stay at Insider, because Insider is a great place to work and the company had been very good to me and it was the best job I ever had. But towards the end, I was the editor-in-chief of the news division. I was supervising nearly 100 people, which was great because the division had grown and was successful. But I was starting my day on the phone to Singapore. I was ending my day, often very late at night, on the phone to Los Angeles. And doing that for a number of years straight, I was tired, right? There was some burnout there. I really enjoyed the work. And it's, if you're in the news business, you do work long hours, or you're kind of always on. You have your phone at the ready in case something happens, like the Queen dying, for instance. So I know that the Insider news team right now is working some really long hours covering the death of the Queen. But towards the end of that 10-year period, starting about 2 years ago, I thought, actually, if I ever did want to leave, I'd want to have some kind of plan in front of me, something else to look forward to. And I've always thought it would be nice to write a book, but the key with writing a book is you've got to write about something something you're an expert in, like a story that you're particularly close to, Insider had grown from a blog that literally, 10 years ago, no one read it, no one took it seriously. It had a handful of employees, and now it's grown into this sort of global media giant. It's very dominant in its space. It's very commercially successful. They won a Pulitzer this year. And I just thought to myself, what if I wrote a book about that was sort of inspired by the management culture, which is very different from most companies, which are often sort of very toxic, frankly, and not much fun to work at. And I knew this one guy in publishing, Chris Parker at Harriman House, and I emailed him and said, if I wrote a book of management advice, based on what I've learned over the years at Insider and other places, would you be interested? And he said yes. So I just thought it would be an interesting project. And I learned a lot on the job. I did not start out at Insider as a manager of any kind, really. I was brought on to write about advertising. I think I supervised 2 people when I started. But most of my job was, reporting and writing, and not really managing anyone. And by the end, as I said, I was supervising nearly 100 people, and I had to learn how to do that along the way. And it turns out that's actually really difficult. And I made a lot of mistakes. And but anyone can do it if you really, if you put the effort in. And at the end, I just thought, I wish someone had handed me this book at the very beginning. That would have solved a lot of problems. I could have just read it in a single afternoon and not had to learn on the job. The main thing is that managing people is completely different from doing the job. I went in to do a job, which is journalism and write news. But the job I ended up doing was managing people, and that is completely different from writing, reporting, and editing. It's a separate job. It's a new job. And I think people don't quite realize that is the case. When you are promoted into management or to supervise anyone, even if you're just supervising one or two other people, you have a new job. You have a brand new job that is going to require a completely different set of skills.
Yeah.
And no one ever really makes that clear to you. They just say, oh, you're great at the old job. Why don't we give you a new title with a higher salary and, do your best?
No, I can imagine like being promoted into like basically running a team. It's difficult because the very thing you've gone into doing in the beginning, you're now being slowly moved away from it. If you truly loved what you were doing, you're like getting into this new realm, like into this new area which you're like might be totally alien to you.
Yeah,
I can imagine in the beginning.
Yeah. So in the media world, your best reporter, typically the person on your team who's your best reporter, the one getting the most scoops and doing the best stories, the temptation is to make them an editor, supervising other people. And in many ways, that makes no sense at all, because if they're good at being a reporter, why would you stop them being a reporter? Now they might turn out to be a really excellent editor, and actually, as an editor, you do want someone who has the proper hands-on experience and skills. You want someone who knows how to do that. But it's supervising other people is a completely different task. The way I've sort of talked about it, this isn't in the book, but it's a similar analogy, is if you look at my favorite football team, Liverpool FC. So Mo Salah is the striker.
Very good team. Yeah. Very good team. I like it. I like that team. It's respect you on that.
Top scorer, right? The top scorer is Mo Salah, the legendary striker of Liverpool.
Mm-hmm.
If Liverpool FC was like any other company and not a famous football club, what the management there would say is they would go to Mo Salah and they would say, "Great job scoring all those goals, Mo. Why don't we put you in charge of the whole club? And, you can sort of like leverage your skills and experience, and maybe everybody that you delegate to will suddenly start scoring more goals." And that, of course, is completely ridiculous. You would never want to do that. You want to leave Mo Salah on the pitch doing what he does best, and you want to have someone else managing the club.
Yeah, push back in you slightly on there. Okay. It seemed to work out well for Kenny Dalglish.
Yeah, it did work out pretty well, but a better example, in my opinion, would be Jurgen Klopp, who famously was not a great football player.
Absolutely.
He was like competent, but not very good, and he talked a good game on the pitch. I think, didn't Jurgen? He started out as a striker. It turned out he wasn't that great at that, so they moved him to midfield.
Yeah,
terrific in midfield. He ended up in defence before he sort of ended up on the bench, sort of like as a coach. Like they've constantly sort of demoted him essentially into management.
Indeed, no, being a striker is not you, Jurgen. Midfield is not quite for you, Jurgen. Defense. Goalkeeper? No, just sit on the bench. You might have come up with a great idea or strategy, but I would say in many respects, like when you take football into example, like a great footballer seldom makes a great manager. And I would say I would imagine if you've got a mediocre reporter, they might not be the best reporter in the field and everything like this, but they might know how to organize people a lot better. And they might take to that like a duck to water,
Yeah. A big part of it is, do you enjoy teaching people the basics of the job? Do you enjoy, coaching and encouraging people and helping other people succeed? Again, that is a completely different job from doing the job. And this isn't, by the way, this book is not just about the media and the news business. It's about any type of business. But there is one of the major problems if you are promoted into management and you have to supervise people is you encounter this thing that I call the existential crisis of management, which is that you are no longer doing the work. Someone else is doing the work. You're delegating that work to them. They have to do it. If they do it well, you probably won't get any credit because all the credit will go to them. If something goes wrong, if they do it badly, you will definitely be held accountable and blamed for it because you are their boss. Either way, you are not the one doing the work. You are entirely dependent on them to do the work. So there's this alienation, there's this disconnect between you, the manager, and the work that is being done. And the other irony about that is that management is necessary. Teams of people do need managers to supervise what they do, to organize what they do, to communicate across teams and with people about what the big plan is and what the goals are and stuff like that. And even though you are not doing the work, supervising the work actually turns out to be a lot of work.
Yeah, no, like this is the thing. Absolutely, you're right. Being a manager, or you could just like say, like basically slash a leader. Management and leadership, they are both the same coin, in my opinion. But with regards to how that's changed, say over the 10 years you like started out, that must be a very interesting time because look, there was a very much a set way of doing things. Then like internet came in and like it started to go one way and it was like looked like it was fixed to go in this direction. Now we're in I would say a very sort of weird place of the gray when it sort of comes to management and leadership with regards to hybrid working and like people trying to sort of figure out things post-pandemic, you could say.
Yeah. This was a big challenge actually at Insider because when the pandemic came in, we immediately sent our people home. Actually, we sent our people home a week before the British government told everyone to go home because we were covering this news and we could see it coming. And a lot of private companies that were in the types of businesses that involved gathering people together in crowds decided to stop doing that. They didn't want to take the risk. And so we saw the writing on the wall and we were like, okay, everybody go home. And I do remember that meeting where there was an all hands in the office in London. And, we sort of stood up, one of us addressed and we said, okay, we're going to go home. We'll isolate and quarantine. And probably we'll see you all back here in a couple of weeks. 2 years later. So we went into quarantine, and at first, like everybody, we thought this is going to be terrible. It's going to be horrible. We can't communicate with each other properly. No one's sitting in the same room anymore. We thought it would really hurt us or damage our performance. Weirdly, it didn't. Weirdly, we actually got better. We got slightly better and slightly faster. I think because the initial advantage is now there is basically only 2 channels of communication, Slack and email, and that's pretty much it. Whereas before there would be Slack, email, meetings, one-on-one conversations, all hands meetings, etc. So the whole sort of the work surface, if you like, became incredibly simplified. And also because people are at home, they can work without interruption. So if you're a writer, working without interruption turns out to be enormously valuable. So for a period, it was actually the performance of the entire company went up, and Insider did very, very well during the pandemic. Now, as time dragged on, disadvantages began to kick in. And the most obvious one was we'd start to get questions from staff who were like really worrying and really stressing about various issues that did not exist. Because in the old days, you're sitting in a crowded office, and if you have a worry, you can just ask your colleague, should I do A or B? And the colleague would just say, oh, forget about A, just do B, because the managers don't care at all about A. Just forget about it, don't do it. And that concern would be solved in a 30-second chat, just in the kitchen or at the water cooler or whatever. But because everyone's at home in the pandemic and they're just on their own, those conversations no longer exist. So
Mm.
people can start worrying about things, and they're having a conversation inside their head instead of with their colleagues. And and I've done this, I've been there. You can really build up an anxiety about something inside your head if you don't have good communication with the people you need to talk to. So we lost a lot of that, and I think also the worry was you lose a lot of like random conversations with people who are maybe not in your department,
Mm.
people at the company you've not met before, because you're not just sort of bumping into them or seeing them every day. So yeah, we lost a bit of that, and now the company is like a hybrid thing. Some people go in, some people don't. In London, for instance, Thursdays became a big day where pretty much everyone would try to go in on Thursday, and then the team would go for drinks in the pub afterwards. We were sort of retained some socialization, but also on the other days, if you had childcare issues or you just had a big project on and you didn't want to be interrupted,
Mm.
you stay at home.
Yeah. No, because like this is the thing. Like when you say, yeah, the small things start to get sweated and they become bigger like issues. Like I would imagine also that sort of realm of spontaneous creativity is kind of lost because if you're getting on a Slack, like putting your like sending out a message in Slack, you've then got to wait for a reply.
Yeah.
And then like it's just many more steps and much more friction within the
Yeah.
process. But I do find it interesting that, yeah, there are some things where it cuts away the sort of fat from the body.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So yeah, I mean, I'm a big sort of social person. I like talking to people face to face.
I never got that about you.
uh,
No.
I like to feel someone's vibe, because it's only when you meet someone face to face that you can really tell if you're on the same page, if they understand what you're saying.
Mm.
A classic example is, try making a sarcastic remark in Slack. Half of the people will think you're serious, and the other half will understand that you're joking, and you can really offend people accidentally by, just making a joke. But another weird advantage was, for instance, one year we asked people to come up with like really big story ideas. We wanted to pick a handful of projects where we would just like really big sort of investigations or really in-depth features where we would pour resources in, but we would only pick a small number of them. And the first year in this process, we had like a big meeting where we had, everyone. I think some of us were in a room, some of us were on video, but it was like a big all hands meeting, and ideas were discussed like in a brainstorm session, like en masse, right? And we got some okay ideas, some pretty good ideas. I mean, my feeling about it a year later, after we had executed the ideas, was we got good ideas, but what we didn't get was like really like holy shit excellent ideas. The
Mm.
next time we did that meeting, we were in the pandemic, so we were all isolated. And so I changed the format of the meeting and I said, you know what? I want to do the exact opposite. I want everyone to take some time away from the screens and isolate themselves and just think on their own about what they personally think would be a huge story. And then I want them to submit it anonymously into a form. So if their idea is stupid, no one will be embarrassed, right? Because no one will know who proposed the ideas. And so when we did that, we got much better ideas. Like we got some really excellent ideas because people were not afraid of airing their crazy shit in public, basically. And frankly, to get a really excellent idea, sometimes you really do need to consider the crazy shit at the extreme end, and you
Mm.
need to create an environment in which people are not socially inhibited from suggesting something that's like way out on one end of the agenda. So again, there are weird advantages to this sort of remote work isolation thing. And I want to make I want to make it clear, I'm not one of these people who's like, yes, I love it when everyone is isolated and remote and no one talks to each other. That is absolutely not who I am or what I'm recommending. But there are weird advantages to this. I mean, look, you're in Leamington Spa, right? I'm
Yep.
in London.
Yep.
You and I are having the most in-depth conversation we've had in 4 years because of this technology.
Yeah.
So it's like this is helpful for me and you, even though um Even though really we should have done this in the pub in London.
Well, hey, yeah, you know what? Like, this is the thing. If I was still in London, like, yeah, being like the locations where we were, yes. While you're consuming the beer in like North London, would have been like consuming beers together, and
Yeah.
like, yes.
By the way, for those of your listeners who think I'm now some kind of alcoholic, I just want to point out it's 7:30 on a Friday night.
Look, no one's going to judge you, sir. No one's going to judge you. Look, it's just one of those things. You're having a relaxing beverage, so am I. It happens to be like a cherry Pepsi Max at this present time. It's like, yeah, it's just like, yeah. I can't get like 3 sheets to the wind. Like, yeah, Lord, let me tell you something, child. Oh. But the whole thing is, yeah, I do enjoy this technology. We sit here and have this communication, like conversation right now. It is good. It is excellent. Is it ideal? Not always, because like, yeah, like if we were having this conversation face to face, there would be a little bit more natural chemistry. And look, trust me, I have sat down and done a number of these podcast episodes across the airwaves, the internet, the social network, the metaverse, however you want to describe it. But yeah, the times where I've had people in and we've been having that conversation face to face, it's been better, in my opinion. And yeah, if like one day when this podcast makes money, one day, Jim, I hope to have a studio where I can bring in people on a regular basis. And yes, just chew the fat and like take things forward from there, you know? Yeah. But like,
Sounds good.
yeah, but I am interested, like, yeah, what can someone learn from America's Worst Pizza Restaurant and their like model of leadership?
I think you might be referring to a chapter in the book.
Yeah.
Which is called America's Worst Ever Pizza Restaurant as a Model of Good Leadership. So I'm trying to remember when this was. Was it 2011? Something like that? I can't remember the year. It was roughly 2011 or maybe 2009 or something like that. So Domino's was the pizza restaurant in question, but obviously very famous restaurant chain. And their sales just like went into free fall. And they hadn't changed the recipe of the pizza in something like 25 years. And you got to bear in mind, like when Domino's started off, which was, I think, was sort of late 60s, early 70s, the idea of having a pizza delivered to your front door was revolutionary. And so the quality of it didn't really matter. And also back in the 60s and 70s, people's taste, the sophistication of their taste was fairly primitive. If you're an older person and you remember what food was like in the 70s, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It's not like it is today. So Domino's proposition, we will cook a pizza and deliver it to your door, 25, 30, 40 years ago, this was completely revolutionary. Fast forward to the 2000s, they haven't changed the recipe.
Jim? Oh no, you're frozen. Jim, you coming back to me?
Pizza is. I've been to Chicago.
I lost you briefly for a moment. Like,
okay, I hope I'm back. I can hear you.
Yep, I can see you. You're moving, you're talking.
Okay.
You said after 25 years, they didn't change their recipe.
Yeah. So how did you hear the bit about food in the 70s?
I heard about the food in the 70s and how exciting it was.
Okay. Wow, you missed a lot. Okay.
Okay.
I'll just rewind. So Domino's started, I think, in the late 60s or the 70s, and their original proposition was, we will cook you a pizza and deliver it to your front door. And at that time, 40 years ago, that was regarded as revolutionary, right? You previously couldn't do that. Fast forward to today, people's tastes are much more sophisticated. People have been to Italy, people have been to New York, people have been to Chicago. They know what really good pizza tastes like. And the quality of pizza and all foods has become better and more sophisticated over time. But Domino's had not changed since like the 60s or the 70s, whenever it had started. And its pizza just tasted disgusting, basically. And so sales went into free fall. They'd lost something like 15% of the sales. The stock was tanking. The size of the chain was shrinking, basically. And so they did something that was like really, really brave. Many companies hold focus groups where they get customers in to talk about their feelings about the product. And usually these focus groups are kept complete secret, right? And they're held literally in windowless rooms so that the information inside them can't be leaked. And they'd been having these focus groups. And in these focus groups, universally, Domino's customers were saying, this is the worst pizza I've ever had. It's disgusting. The bread is horrible. The sauce is horrible. The cheese is horrible. Like, it's really, really bad. And they were saying, it feels like there's no love here. There are no fresh ingredients. The crust tastes like cardboard. So they had all these videos of their customers saying this is totally disgusting. And they realized Patrick Doyle was the chief executive, and him and his team realized that they were basically in a crisis, and they had to do something really brave and dramatic to get out of it. So what they did was they showed all these videos to their top management team at the headquarters in Ann Arbor, and they basically said, look, we have to change everything. We have to completely redesign our pizza from scratch, first of all. And so they tried dozens of different types of cheese, dozens of different types of bread, different sauce, etc., until they reformulated a completely brand new product. And then, and this was the really brave part, they used the horrible videos of the focus groups saying how much they hated Domino's pizza. They turned those into a series of TV commercials and viral videos on the web, which is extremely unusual and very brave for a company to do that, because companies always keep their bad news a secret, right? So they had these videos out, and at the end of each ad or each video, Patrick Doyle or some executive from Domino's would say, we hear you. This is not acceptable, and we've changed, and we hope you'll give us a second chance because the pizza is brand new. They also they were quite funny and sort of self-deprecating about it. They basically stalked some of their customers who'd left comments on social media going on about how terrible the pizza was. And so they'd show up at these customers' houses and say, we beg your forgiveness, and we've got a new pizza. Would you try it? And these people would sort of, be bullied into trying a slice of pizza on the doorstep. And of course, they liked it because it was better. And the whole thing was put together in a very clever way. It's very charming, and it's actually quite moving, because the employees of Domino's are genuinely they're genuinely upset and disturbed about the fact that they are making a product that everyone regards as terrible, and they're quite emotional about the fact that they had to work really hard and basically admit what we are doing is crap and we have to change. It's change or die kind of situation. And they turned it around. And within a couple of years, they were growing again, and the stock had like quintupled in value. And the reason I say it's that America's worst ever pizza restaurant is a great example of good leadership is because Patrick Doyle, the chief of the company, he's a very ordinary guy, really. I mean, he's very successful at what he does. But, he's not good looking. He's not sexy. He's not like charismatic like Steve Jobs or one of these people. He just had a plan. And he went to his entire company and he said, look, we're in real trouble, and I'm not going to bullshit you, but this is basically a crisis and we have to change everything we do. That was the first. So he was completely transparent about the fact that they had a massive problem. And then the second thing he did was he said, here's the plan. We have to change everything, which is very difficult to say to I think they had like 9,000 employees or something. I can't remember. I'm going to get that wrong. Tens of thousands of employees anyway. It's very difficult to go to everyone you work with and basically say, what you have been doing is crap, and you now need to learn something completely new. People hate hearing that. But he did it anyway, so he's very transparent and honest. And then he sort of laid out exactly what would have to happen. And it turns out that at a pizza restaurant, the scale of Domino's, it means almost every single employee had to learn to do something new. They even had to redesign the boxes that the pizza came in. They had to relearn, every ingredient is different. So all the buyers have to buy new ingredients. the recipe is now different, so every pizza has to be cooked in a different way. All the machines that cook the food have to be recalibrated differently, etc., etc. Like it touched everyone inside this company. But to get them all on the same page, he basically laid it out very, very clearly and said, "This is the challenge we have. We have to succeed at it. It will be a lot of hard work." His many members of his team worked weekends and worked nights. He was like, it's always very difficult to ask people, will you work a weekend? But sometimes if you're on a mission and you want the mission to succeed, you have to put in extra hours. And he did. And the lesson I drew from this, and there's a better description of this in the book than what I've just given you, is that good leadership doesn't look like a TED talk, right? It doesn't look like in the movies where some guy stands on a desk and goes, "Yay!" and like rallies the team and everyone. He gets a standing ovation and people throw things. That's not at all what leadership looks like in real life. In real life, it's basically you level with people and you say, "Okay, everybody, I'm not going to bullshit you. I'm going to completely tell you the truth. We have a problem. We need to solve it. I've got a plan to solve it. And here is your role within the plan. And here is the goal we're aiming for. So please work towards that. I appreciate that this is going to be a lot of hard work, but if we succeed, it will absolutely be worth it." It's as simple as that.
Yeah, no, like this is the thing. Like when it comes to on that story which you've told quite eloquently, thank you. Like the whole thing is, yeah, they sat down, they listened to their customers, they were brave enough to show the world that they are listening and they are willing to make the effort to change, which, you know what, when people like, oh yeah, and I think this is where a lot of people fail in leadership. They go, I've heard what you've said, I've listened to you, and then they just carry on their merry way. It's like going, but you haven't listened to us.
Yeah.
You haven't really put anything into action. You haven't listened to our concerns.
The other tactical advantage of doing what they did was that there was a lot of people out there who were on the internet, for instance, who were quite happy to say, Domino's is shit. Domino's is terrible. Why would I eat that? But by doing this and by publicly advertising the fact that they realized that their product was awful, they kind of draw a line on it, and it prevents the critics from saying anything further about it, because they're saying, we admit we were terrible, but we have turned this around and now we have a new thing, and this is the new thing. So you draw a line under it, and it does, and you leave the baggage in the past, basically.
And like this is the thing, I'm not too sure there are that many sort of leaders or in management who would be prepared to do that. They would be quite happy to carry on in their merry little way, but they never really sort of address those issues or problems or take the time out to devise a plan to make things better, which frustrates everyone at the end of the day.
Yeah, it is really easy in management. It's easy to ignore problems. It's difficult to sort of come out and transparently say, you know what, guys, we have screwed this up and now we need to do something else. And often in management, the temptation is that even when you realize there's a problem that needs to be solved, and you're going to be asking people to do something new, and it's going to be difficult and it might take a long time, there is a temptation to spin that or to couch that plan in a very positive, upbeat language, as if what you're asking people to do is a pleasure and will be awesome. And you're an idiot if you don't like this. I mean, people are not idiots. They know if a project is going to make them work harder. So it's worth just saying to people, look, we need to do this. We don't really have an alternative because we are failing at the old thing. We need to do a new thing, and we want you to dig deep, and it's going to be tough, but we appreciate the effort you're going to put in, because at the end, if we succeed, it will be enormously satisfying, and also we will all still have jobs, because in business, of course, the price of failure is unemployment. It's business is not a democracy, right? It's not like university where you just get to pick your courses, and if you fail at one course, you can try another course. In business, problems are existential. If you don't solve them, people start losing their jobs, and companies close, and companies go bankrupt and go to the wall all the time because they cannot deal with change, basically.
Mm. Like with regards to like, how can I say, your diverse and long career, have you like, not from a manager's point of view, have you seen this being a, like at work when you've been like, yeah, like a soldier in the trenches, say?
Um, yes, I think one of the most difficult things that sort of happened to me was in 2014, I moved from New York to London to set up Business Insider UK. And the original mission there was that we would have a separate website for Business Insider UK. It would serve a UK audience. The news on it would be UK focused. And we would sell that site to UK advertisers. And it was, in its own way, very successful. It had a much bigger audience than the Financial Times. It had a bigger audience than the Times or the Evening Standard or any of these any of these people, with the exception perhaps of the BBC, the Mail, and the Guardian. The problem was that there were not enough advertisers who wanted to reach UK readers through Insider in the UK, basically. And the UK market for that proposition of what we were doing turned out to be smaller than we needed it to be. To sort of give you an idea, Insider reaches hundreds of millions of people across the globe, and the audience in the UK was like 10 million. So even if we doubled the UK audience, it would still look like a rounding error among the hundreds of millions of people that we needed to reach. We're sort of at Insider and at any media business of this size. By the way, this is not a secret about Insider. I'm sure BuzzFeed thinks the same way, and Huffington Post thinks the same way, and or the Guardian and the Mail. It's the same for all of them. They're thinking to themselves, where does the next 50 million people come from? Where does the next 100 million people come from? So finding 10 million new readers is not really helping. So we had to change what the team in London was doing. And we basically had to say to people, look, you've done a great job, but this is not moving the needle as far as we need it to go. So we need to change everyone's priorities and goals. And what we said to them is, you can write about whatever you like. You can write about whatever you like. It can be about Britain. It can be not about Britain. But you have to grow the audience and you have to make it bigger. So that means you now have the freedom to write about stuff in America, in the US, or in fact in any other country. So the mission became a lot more global. And basically we said to people, we don't care what you write about, but we want what you write about to be of interest globally, so that you're reaching the biggest possible audience with your stories. And the good news about that is that if you want to reach a big global audience, you have to focus on big global stories. You cannot focus on the small trivial ones that no one cares about. You have to focus on the really big stuff. So that's a big opportunity for all the journalists there. But the other challenge was I'd hired 50 people to write about the UK, and then I had to tell them, change of mission, guys.
Write about the world.
Now we're writing about the world. We're broadening out the mission. This was not an easy set of conversations to have. For me personally, I had spent some time sort of defending the UK mission and saying, no, we have succeeded. Why can't you understand this kind of thing? But eventually, although I was the boss of BI UK, I have bosses in America, and those Americans have bosses in Germany, which is where the corporate headquarters of the conglomerate ownership is. And then those guys in Germany have bosses in various investors and institutions that own their stock, and so on and so forth. So everyone is in like a chain. There's never an ultimate boss. So my bosses came to me and basically gave me the Domino's pizza thing. They were like, thank you for your hard work. It is not succeeding the way we need it to. You now need a new mission. Here it is. And initially I resisted because I was very proud of what we had done. But ultimately I decided, I have lost this argument. I've fought a good fight, but it's not a democracy. It's inside a private company. It's not the case that you can sort of campaign and just if you can persuade the majority of people you're right, you will be right. That is not how that's not how business works. So I said I accepted. I was forced to accept that I had lost this argument, and that was difficult for me personally. It was a blow to my ego because my name was on the door here, if you like.
Yeah.
And so I then faced a choice, and my choice was, well, I could leave the company because whatever I have done here is not regarded as successful, even though in my opinion it was.
Yeah.
Or I could just take a deep breath and say, you know what, I now have a new job, and the new job is to make this global thing work. And it turned out that it did work. So this change took place when we had about 50 people in London. When I left London, we had 150 employees. So clearly, the new mission was more successful. This was Domino's Pizza, in many ways. And now, actually, that's unfair. Our old pizza was pretty good pizza. But the new pizza was in many ways demonstrably superior.
It kind of blows my mind that you go, okay, yeah, I've set up something with 10 million people coming in on a daily, on a month-to-month basis, and they're like, yeah, it's not good enough.
It was very disappointing for me personally. But to make money on the internet, it depends where you are on the internet, of course. But in general, to make money on the internet, 10 million people is not going to be enough. It sounds crazy.
But it is crazy. You go 10 million people. That's not a small amount. That is London.
Well, think about the operating logistics, right? So to run a news organization, 10 million readers need to sustain 50 employees. 50 employees. I mean, I don't know what the average salary would be, but obviously it's in the tens of thousands of pounds. They're all sitting at desks. They all need a MacBook. There are legal bills, administrative costs, so on and so forth. You can, do your own back of the envelope maths, but the cost of employing 50 people is quite high. So you need advertisers willing to cover that and more to make a profit. And if you've only got 10 million readers per month, and advertising rates are, I mean, I don't know what CPMs are these days, but they're extremely low, right? You can, if to reach 1,000 people, it's pennies.
Right.
So reverse engineer that math, and you start to realize that you need way more than tens of millions of people to look at content before the money starts to become big enough to sustain a newsroom. There are, of course, I don't want to sound discouraging because lots of people make a lot of money on the internet. It's actually, if you want to make profit, it's a lot easier to just be one person going viral on TikTok and get yourself sponsored than it is to run a newsroom.
That's kind of like there's a person out there like there's gonna start my media empire, but
no, you're in a good position because you're one person, so you don't have to employ 49 other people to get your podcast out there. So it will be easier for you to leverage yourself and win ultimately than it would be for a big company.
And that is the plan for the future. Yes. It's yes, my little media empire of me, myself, and I. If it ever does make money, I might scale that up to 2, possibly 3 people. It's like, yes. But yeah. But you know what I mean? There's a term called eating the frog, and that sounds like it was a painful frog. It's like eating the frog is where if you've got a task, you've got to do like a number of tasks during the day. It's the worst task you take on first. So you get that out of the way. So you got the rest of the day free. Yeah, eating the frog. Yeah,
eating the frog. Okay.
Yeah, but
that's interesting because I actually do it completely the opposite way.
Really?
Yeah. If I have to, if there are certain things I have to do in the day, I will start off with the easiest, quickest one to execute, and then I'll go to the next one because I like to sort of build momentum. And if I can just fix one thing, and have it off the list, I'm like, great, 1 down, 5 to go. And then the same with the second one. And like it to me, it feels like you can sort of build momentum through that. If I started off with the hardest one, I wouldn't want to be, I don't know, demoralized when I'm picking off the easier ones. Yeah. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that's one of the ways I do it.
No, I hear you. But like, this is the thing with regards to a lot of people like look at success in either management or leadership or just basically success in their lives in general. And if they've got to aim for this sort of lofty height of excellence to like, yes, I am the best in this because I have far exceeded everyone. Like, you don't believe in that?
No, not really. I think one of the flaws or difficulty of this whole sort of, management advice or success advice, or if you're reading self-help books and stuff like that, is that they say to you, strive to be excellent. You should be excellent at your thing. I think there's a book out there that suggests that to become really good at something, you should do it for 10,000 hours before you can do it. There's Sir Alex Ferguson, the former manager of Manchester United, wrote a book called Leading, and the implicit promise. The implicit promise of this book is that if you can just learn from Alex Ferguson, you can be as successful as him. And there's a big focus on, if you care about success, there's a big focus on looking at these like truly exceptional people like Steve Jobs, or an investor like Peter Thiel or Warren Buffett or someone like that, and to say, what can we learn from these people who really have had completely amazing careers where they're totally at the top of their game? And my point is, that's not going to be you. The chances of you being as good as those guys is very small. Like, just statistically, it's extremely unlikely. But what you can definitely do is be better than average. And it's actually not that difficult to become better than average. All you have to do is to sort of apply yourself diligently, or just, in fact, figure out what the average performance is in your field and just do slightly better than that. And first of all, if you can do that, you'll always be in the top half of people in your field, which right there is an achievement that is well within your grasp, right? And then the second thing you can do is, having done that, is just try to just get a little bit better at it every week or every day or every month, or however you're measured. It is, if I was to come to you and to say, let's say you're selling cars, if I was to come to you and say, you know what, I want you to double the amount of cars you sell by next month, that's like a crazy difficult goal to reach if you're working at a car dealership. But if I came to you and just said, just sell one more car next month than you did the previous month, that actually is very doable. Like, you could probably do that if you have experience selling cars. And if you could do that for, do that the next month and then the month after that, and so on and so forth, what actually happens is that eventually you do double the amount of cars that you sell, and but you have not done it by forcing people to jump over insane mountains. And so this is what I call the power of being slightly better than average. It doesn't feel like a very inspiring it doesn't feel like a very sort of inspiring mission to say, be slightly better than average. But if you can be slightly better than average, and then you can improve your own performance or your own skill or your own experience just incrementally, week on week and month after month, what happens is that you are just gathering, your improvement will become you will become excellent, but you will kind of do it slowly. You won't do it instantly, basically.
Yeah, no, I hear that. And like, this is one of those things where, like, one of the things I sort of believe in is like, be 2% better than you were the day before. It's not a huge thing, and people like go, what, 2%? What do you mean by 2%? Just be 2% better. Like, do 2% more than you were doing the day before, and you'll be amazed at how quickly things all of a sudden, like, through the compound of doing that, change. You'll be like, okay, you were there, you're at this level, and now you're at this level. And all you've like, it's like going, right, you haven't done it each day. It doesn't seem like you've done much, but pow, it makes a world of difference, you know?
There's an example that a lot of people do in their ordinary lives every single day, which demonstrate this. And it's, you know, if you go to the gym, if you lift weights or do exercises in the gym, if you can just do one more pull-up, you know, even if you have to take a breather and like, you know, sit it out for 2 minutes and then just do one more pull-up than you would normally do before leaving the gym. And then the next day, you know, you go back to the gym a couple of days later, and the next time do 2 more pull-ups. You know, pretty soon, first of all, you will be able to do some of those extra pull-ups without too much extra effort because you'll just be getting stronger. But before you know it, you're doing 8 extra pull-ups, and then you're doing 16 extra pull-ups, and so on and so forth. And, you know, the gains are really kicking in. And anyone who, you know, if you go running or swimming or whatever it is, it's not that difficult to say to a runner, just, you know, add an extra 100 yards on next time, you know. And people do this with their health in the gym all the time. What I'm suggesting is do it at work. There's a very old-fashioned thing that people used to talk about. I'm not entirely sure how useful this is, but it's the same sort of theme, which is a lot of people who are successful will say that one thing they did was to arrive at work 5 minutes before everybody else does, and, you know, just to leave 5 minutes later than most people do. You know, it's not a big ask, but it does demonstrate that you're willing to put in just slightly more effort than the average employee.
Just like, hey, how comes you're 5 minutes here? Yeah, don't worry about it. Yeah, I have a plan. Love it. So through this sort of work ethic, yes, great things have come out of it. Now, with when you mentioned, like basically some of the great sort of people, like people we look up to, like what people also forget is a lot of that sometimes comes down to timing. Like if you ask Steve Jobs to start Apple today, could you do it? You could, but it'll be a lot tougher because there is a computer market established, and much of the sort of advancements which were there at that time don't exist today because they've failed. That's
true. The genius of Steve Jobs, though, was that he was not the first person to build a home computer, right? And in fact, when he started building home computers for the consumer market, there were lots of other home computers available to people. He just made sure that his was slightly better and slightly simpler for everyone to use. And to this day, Apple's products are slightly better and slightly simpler for most people to use. And I'm talking to you on a MacBook right now. Why am I using a MacBook? Because it's just slightly better and slightly simpler than the other laptops that are available. They're just easier to use. You don't need an instruction manual to use a MacBook, right? Now, I think part of the proof that Steve Jobs was a genius was that in 2004, we all had mobile phones. You know, I'm guessing, meanwhile, you had a Razr. Did you have a Motorola Razr?
Thankfully not. No, like, put it this way, if it wasn't like at that time, I think I was flirting between Nokia and Sony Ericsson.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I was always a Nokia man, but I just figured you were like sort of a fashion forward guy, and you would have gone for the sexy flip phone, the big Razr.
Put it this way, like, okay, one of the things what like made me chuckle about the Razr phone, like one of my best mates, I will not say his name on the airwaves, but when we were out and about hitting the clubs and stuff like this, like he would have a regular Nokia phone and he'll have a Razr. And every time he went up to a young lady, he'll whip out his Razr phone and go say, "Yeah, how you doing?" And still like take the number and then transfer it to the Nokia.
Because the Razr didn't work.
Well, it was a case of, it worked, but he just didn't like have any credit on it. But he had credit Oh, it's like, right. So it was like, yeah, flash, look at the razor, flick.
That's funny. So in this environment, right, everyone has a mobile phone, but Steve Jobs is like, actually, I think a mobile phone should be able to show you the internet, and it should have really good apps on it, and it should be much more powerful. And so he demanded that the iPhone be brought into existence, and it was in 2004. And so he went in to a crowded market where brands like Motorola and Ericsson and Nokia were already completely dominant.
Yeah.
And just because he made it better and simpler, um, iPhone now dominates that market. And so to return to your original question, if Steve Jobs was alive today, how would he think about this? I think he would probably look at crypto and Web3 and digital assets and tokenization and stuff like that. And he would look at this arena, which if you look at crypto right now, it's a total mess. Like, it's a disaster area. It's not even clear if it's going to be useful. Big parts of the industry are destructive. There are a lot of bad actors in crypto and digital assets. Having said that, these people have invented something genuinely new and interesting, and someone will figure out a good use for it. And what I think Steve Jobs would do is say, look, here's a new technology. It's obviously not going away, but it's poorly used right now. It's difficult. It's complicated. Consumers generally don't like it and don't trust it. Why don't we use this, take it, and let's do a better, simpler version where Apple can dominate? I think that is where Steve Jobs would be thinking right now if he was still alive.
Interesting. Because, like, this is the thing, when you talk about the crypto space, let's put the random coins aside and all that.
Yeah.
Because that is the wild, wild west on steroids, in my opinion.
Yeah.
When you're using it from the sort of terms of smart contracts, I think there is a future there. I think there's something what can be used there. It's just, there's going to have to be a lot of churn and burn of the nonsense to get there on that side of things.
That whole area to me feels like what the web used to feel like in the late 90s. There was a huge growth in usership on the web in the late 90s. Everyone had a website. Everyone was surfing around. But very few people were making money on it. Very few people were actually providing something useful or interesting or sustainable. And there was a big crash in 2000, right? It was a huge crash. It brought down the economy. A lot of those early web businesses went to the wall. The email provider that I had my first ever email with no longer exists. My first ever social media was on a site called The Globe, no longer exists, even though The Globe functionally did exactly what Facebook does now. The fact is, you're absolutely right. The industries have to go through this churn and burn where developing something like Facebook, but developing it in 1998 turns out to be useless. What you actually need is to have the technology get a little bit better and the interface get a little bit better, and to just have a better experience and better knowledge about what consumers really want from these things. And then when you launch your Facebook in 2004, you've got it right. And so I think crypto is in that area right now. It's a mess. No one really knows what's going to work. But in a few years, the winners will emerge and the losers will go to the wall.
I have to ask, did you invest in any of the coins or whatnot?
So one of my big regrets is not buying one of these coins. At Insider, I first heard about this stuff in about 2011, of course. And I remember we did a news story about Bitcoin reaching $100. That was a big price. And then Bitcoin reached $1,000, and that was a big price at the time. And I wrote stories about Bitcoin and this whole area, and certainly edited a few. But I could never convince myself that it was useful, because Bitcoin is not an asset. It doesn't represent anything. The price of Bitcoin simply represents the demand for Bitcoin versus the supply of Bitcoin. There's no underlying asset. It's not like buying a stock or an equity or a bond or shares. it has no value other than its value. It's a price. It's not an asset. It's a price.
Yeah.
So I was just very, very wary of it. Of course, I absolutely should have bought a bunch and just kept it. I have a source actually who several years later, I was on the phone with this guy for some unrelated reason. I was trying to interview him about something, and I knew he lived in Boston. And it was like sort of like 9 in the morning London time, but he was on the phone with me, which meant it was 4 in the morning Boston time. And I said to him, "Why are you awake? Why are you answering the phone at this hour?" And he said, "I'm looking at the price of Bitcoin." And the price had just gone to $20,000 a Bitcoin.
Oh.
And I said to him, "Well, why are you looking at that?" And he goes, "Because I own about 50 of them." And I said, "Wow, when did you buy them?" And he said, "Well, actually, Jim, you and I had a conversation about this in 2012. And after I talked to you, I bought them." I was like, "Oh." Now I feel like an idiot because I did not buy them. Having said that, full disclosure, earlier this year, I did buy a small amount of Ethereum. Not because I'm not investing in crypto. I just wanted to understand how it worked, and just felt smart to buy a few and watch it and see what happens. Basically, I am interested in the Ethereum's move to the the merge to the new blockchain, which will use a fraction of the energy of the old blockchain. Because a thing I really worry about, and a thing I really dislike about crypto, is the amount of energy it uses is really destructive. Like it is, crypto is contributing to global warming. Like it is bad. So this Ethereum blockchain merge can only be a good thing.
Yeah, no, because that's one that like people talk about the sort of environmental impact of like of the blockchain across the world, but I don't think they've really sort of truly sat down and gone, this is the deep environmental impact. I think they've just touched the surface of it, because the amount of coins which have come up and that disappearing, coming back, and it's just it was a point where it was just getting ridiculous this time last year. It's calmed down now because I think confidence has ebbed away, if you get what I mean, from a lot of the stuff, because there was too much pump and dump, in my opinion. You get a fancy influencer like appear, I've got this coin. Yeah, like, what is it? BS coin. Like, invest in it today. It's going to go to the moon. Diamond hands. But yeah, it just went slightly awry,
I mean, there's a really serious question to ask about what is the point of almost all of these coins, because today, I can't walk down any high street and buy stuff with Bitcoin or even Ethereum. If you ask me to spend my Ethereum or my Bitcoin, it's difficult for me to think of a normal thing to buy. So there is still a complete lack of purpose to 99% of all crypto coins. But these crypto coins are using electricity at the rate of entire countries, which is massively destructive to the environment. It produces a large amount of carbon dioxide. The public or society or governments would be very easily justified in saying, this is a waste. This is an industry that has no purpose whatsoever. It's only destructive. Therefore, it should be illegal. So the crypto world really needs to come up with a reason to exist beyond merely existing.
Do you think that they will actually start banning sort of cryptocurrencies in large sways, do you reckon? Or the sort of concept of the blockchain?
No. I think what will happen is that the people in the crypto industry will lobby governments very, very hard to have governments regulate them. Now, crypto people hate regulation, and they think that the entire point of crypto is that it can exist whether regulation exists or not, right? Because it's private and it's permanent and it's transparent, and therefore is not subject to laws. But the truth is there's an enormous amount of money at stake, and when people have an enormous amount of money at stake, they want to make sure that money is preserved. And the very best way to preserve money and to preserve assets is to ask the government to regulate your industry, because even though everyone hates regulation, If the government regulates you, the very first step in regulating you is making you legal. And once you are legal, then whatever the other regulations are, that's much more academic, because if you're legal, it means the government is extremely unlikely to destroy that wealth by banning it or taking it away. So I think what you will see is a lot of lobbying to say, oh, crypto is a commodity. Crypto is a type of currency. Please regulate us like a commodity, or please regulate us like a currency. And they will happily pay taxes, because again, once an industry is paying taxes, governments are very reluctant to ban an industry that is paying taxes for obvious reasons. Why do tobacco companies still exist, even though they literally sell poison?
Gotta be
Because
that revenue.
they pay taxes. So, crypto is going to be like that. Crypto is going to be like, please regulate us, because that will legalize us and therefore permanently ensure our existence.
Interesting. Now, I've got no crypto, all of that type of thing. It's a little bit like, at this moment in time, it's pie in the sky, kind of like the metaverse and all that type of side of things.
Yeah.
Like, with regards to sort of management, like, okay, you mentioned a number of times, like, yes, simpler and easy. Now, with regards to management in its future and leadership, how do you think it's going to be made simpler and better?
That's a very complicated question. There is no easy answer to that. Managing people is not going to become simpler. I mean, you can make it a bit better. It's not going to become simpler, because the world is not going to become simpler. The world is only becoming more complex. So managing people is only going to become more difficult and more complex, in my opinion, which is, one of the reasons I wrote the book. The job is becoming more difficult, and therefore you should read the book, and it will help you. Can you make your question more specific? Because I'm struggling to. Hooray! Thank you. I'm struggling to give you a sensible answer.
Okay. What would make things easier and better for managers? Not with people, but for like either putting systems into place on a day-to-day basis to make their jobs either simpler or easier. If you can.
Okay, so one thing that was really helpful to me at Insider was the company gives its employees a very large amount of data about the performance of their stories and their work and traffic on the sites and stuff like that, so that any employee, even a fellow, even an intern, can pretty much see the exact same information that management is looking at about their performance, their colleagues' performance, their team's performance, the performance of the company as a whole. This, as a manager, made my job easier because, first of all, everyone is starting from the same place when it comes to information. Everyone knows exactly what we're looking at, what the issues are, what we're dealing with. No one's under any illusion that they're doing well, if in fact they're doing badly, and no one's under any illusion if someone is doing badly that they're doing well, right? So there's no illusions. That is really useful. The other thing that I found really useful that I think managers should do, but they don't think of this very much, is you want your people, you want your employees and your teams to track their own performance with checkable data, data that you can check to make sure they're not faking it, basically. But you want them to produce their own data and to report that data up to you about their performance routinely, so that the manager is not doing it all himself. And there's two things that are valuable about this. First of all, it focuses people on tracking their own performance so that they can see the value that they are creating, so that they can see their success and that they know what success looks like. And also they know when, they're screwing up and when they're failing. But the other thing is you want them to progress over time. And having them crunch the numbers regularly will seeing that success, it will help them see that success over time. It will help them see whether they're growing or whether they're going down over time. They're not just like living on a day-to-day basis like a goldfish where they can't remember what just happened, and they come into work, do the job, and leave, and they don't care about the long term. And working with people underneath you who really understand what the issues are and who really understand the data and the relative performance of themselves and their people, that is tremendously useful. So so having staff track their own data and present it upwards to you, doing that routinely is like really, really useful. It really helps you make decisions. One thing it helps you with is, regardless of whether someone can show you a chart of numbers where the numbers are going up and things look great, is some people can do this and like it and are good at it and can present you regularly with really good, interesting information that tells a story and demonstrates a point about the value that they're bringing or the problems they're trying to solve. Other people don't care. Other people are bad at this and they don't understand why this is interesting or valuable or crucial, and they forget to do it, or they present their data in a haphazard, lackadaisical way. And this tells you as a manager instantly, maybe this person should not be promoted. Because if you're doing work and you don't care about the performance of the work, you don't care about whether your customers liked it or not, then what do you care about?
What do they care about? They're not truly buying into what the sort of culture of the place is, or just basically execution of their job in just general.
So there's work has a value, but people often define the value incorrectly. If I make shoes, my shoes, I might think that the shoes I make are really, really awesome, but if no one wants to buy them, are they any good? No, they're probably not good, right? There's a reason no one wants to buy my shoes. Maybe they're too expensive, maybe they're ugly. So my personal opinion about the quality of my shoes is neither here nor there. You demonstrate that your shoes are good by selling lots of them. So first of all, whether your customers or your readers or your users or whoever your target audience is, they have to buy and consume what you produce, and that is a demonstration of value, and it demonstrates something about whether what you are doing is good or not, right? So that's important. So you have to care about what other people think of your products and whether they are willing to act and buy it or read it or consume it or whatever it is. There are other types of work where sometimes you just do some work that makes the company look good and is good for the brand, right? So, for instance, car companies will make really amazing prototype vehicles that they will display at car shows, and they're like incredibly sexy and amazing and futuristic looking, and they never put them into production, right? Those cars are just there to demonstrate to people that, yes, we have the technology, we have the design chops, we can do this if we wanted to because we're cool. But they're not going to actually sell them because they know no one's going to buy that stuff. No one's going to buy a 2-seater 3-wheeler for £100,000. Even if it's got wings, no one's going to buy that. But they want to demonstrate that they have the ability, that they have the internal talent to produce something like that, and it helps the brand, right? So that kind of work without performance is fine as long as it's limited and in its place. You can't have your entire team doing that. The people at Ford, they can't stop making. Does the Ford Escort still exist? Whatever what's the most common Ford car? I don't know, the F-150.
The
transit van, Ford Transit van.
Ford Transit in the UK, Ford Transit van. In America, it is the Ford 150 Raptor or Lightning or
all right, so the Ford Transit vans for our foreign listeners. The white Ford Transit van is the van that your plumber will show up at your house in to fix a leak in your house. Like every plumber, every electrician, every builder will show up in a Ford Transit. Ford is not going to stop making the Ford Transit. Ford is not going to be like, no, from now on, we're only going to make the Batmobile, because it's the most amazing, sexy car we can come up with. We can definitely make it, and it's going to cost everyone £200,000, but it has wings and it can fly. So,
if you could get a
forget about the
Batmobile for
Ford
only
Transit.
£200,000, I'll be impressed. I will show
Forget
up with the
about,
money tomorrow.
yeah. Forget about your white vans. We're only selling Batmobiles from now on because we're amazing and cool. That will never happen. You cannot have your entire company making Batmobiles. Some people really have to care about the Ford Transit, because that is what pays the rent at Ford.
Yeah, it's the bread and butter. It's the bread and butter to that daily cash, as they say. But
yeah, the flip side of this is that there is an old-fashioned view of work in which someone shows up to work, they work really hard. The quality of their work may be really, really good, and the company pays them to do the work, but their consumers and readers and users are not interested in that work being done. And a lot of companies have some people doing this, some teams doing this, or maybe an individual doing this. They've just done the same job for years. They come in, they do the work, they leave. And those people assume my work has value because I did the work and because you paid me to do it. Therefore, it must have value. Actually, that is not how work is valued. The work has to have some use beyond the fact that you did it.
I think I would say the vast majority of people don't actually understand the value of their work to a company's entity. Like they go, we produce X and it costs that much money, so we've made that much money for the company. This is why I get paid. But when you sort of break it down into it's like sort of everything what goes into it, you're like, you didn't make that much money. It's like you most really made a couple £100, say, at the end of it. So, and they just like, what? And when you break it down that way, it comes.
So I appreciate right now that I sound like a very ruthless capitalist, but in fact, this is the value of this for workers. This is incredibly valuable for workers, because if you have your workers tracking their own performance and being able to demonstrate upwards the value of what they do, what those workers will discover is that sometimes management does not quite understand where the real value is in the company and who's really productive and who's really succeeding and where the real value is being created. And when workers are able to go to management and on a regular basis and to be able to say, hey, these are the results, this is the data, and I can demonstrate to you as a matter of fact that I achieved this and this was successful, and it generated these sales or it generated these users or whatever the metric is, that puts workers in a really powerful position. And a thing that always sticks in my mind from my time at Insider is, we tracked everyone's performance, and we had this one guy who's very quiet. He's not one of these like talk a good game guys. He's not like you, Miwa. He was very quiet.
How dare you, sir?
Yeah, so very low key guy, and also he worked the weekends.
Low key too.
He worked the weekends, right? So I'm only even sharing 3 days of the week with him. He's working on the weekends. I'm not. I'm his boss. I'm not working on the weekends. He was also in a different time zone to me, which meant we got very little FaceTime at all. So he's like very low on my radar, right? Looked at the numbers. This guy is producing twice the audience of any other member of the team, which made me think, if this guy quits and goes to work for someone else, I would have to hire 2 people to just replace the productivity that he was bringing, right? And the reason I knew that was because we're tracking the performance. And one thing we did was when his performance review came around, we gave him a fat pay rise and, made it very clear to him that he was a total rock star and he should continue doing what we locked him in basically. But had we not done the data, that may have flown under the radar and we could have lost the guy. And then, 6 months later, we're scratching our heads. Why are our numbers down? Because the quiet guy left.
Yeah.
So it's valuable for me as a manager to know that data and to know that someone who is not, like an office David Brent, sometimes the quiet people in the room are the productive ones, and you need to know that. But also, it's empowering for those quiet people, for those workers, to be able to demonstrate themselves to management. Hey, I'm twice as good as the person next to me.
Now, with regards to that, like there is, I think, with everything which is going on and which might happen in the near future with regards to, like, yes, the economic climate and everything like that, being able to demonstrate value when, like, maybe some companies might start cutting people here and there will be a saving grace for someone's job, or they'll be able to see how far they can go, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
Like, I have, like, this will be my final question. Then you'll be free to go off into the night.
Friday night.
Yeah, absolutely. Party on. Now, with regards to yourself, like, where do you want, like, you've got the book out now and you're going forward. Where do you want this journey of yours to, like, take you in the next few years?
Oh, that's a difficult question. I would like it if the book is a success. And even if it's not a success commercially, but by the way, I'm under no illusions about book success. Very, very few books make a lot of money. I would like but I would like the book to help people. I would like to, if you've read the book, I would like people to tell me if it was useful and if they liked it. That would be very gratifying. That's a really good question, because I've sort of asked myself that question: what do I want to do next with my career? The book was the thing I was going to do next, but now the book is out, I have to come up with something else. I am I just I don't want to give it away, but I'm working on 2 ideas with 2 different companies, and I'm talking to some investors about these projects. I think one or both of them will come good. So there will be a final act. But and the other thing is, I'm doing some consulting for companies that want that want to know how to, how do you hire people, how do you make journalists succeed, that kind of thing. Yeah, that's a good question, because I do not have a very good answer for it, to be honest. I mean, I'm in a privileged position. I'm pretty lucky. I'm sort of I've had a good career. I've got a book out. I've got time and space in which to think, and I can choose what I do next. I don't have to get a job, put it that way. So I've got this luxury, and honestly, what I am doing right now is enjoying that luxury, because I don't want to make the mistake that I myself have made 2 or 3 times in the past, which is to just take a job because I need a job. The thing I want to do next is something, I want to be really excited about it. I want to be really into it. And I want it to be really interesting and satisfying. So, but I can't, and I've got, as I say, I've got a couple of things I am hoping to build, but I don't want to jinx them by saying them out
loud. Everyone's allowed to have an air of mystery about them, Jim. Awesome. Yeah, I have to say, yeah, thank you very much for your time today, sir. You have been.
Thank you for having me on.
A gent and a scholar. Yeah. How can the lovely people out there find you on these interwebs?
You can find Say Thank You for Everything, the book, by, it's on Amazon. It's also, you can buy it directly from Harriman House as well. Just Google Say Thank You for Everything book. It should come right up. I'm on Twitter at Jim Edwards. I'm at Jim_Edwards. I'm on Instagram at Jim Edwards 123. Yeah, I'm pretty easy to find, to be honest. I'm on LinkedIn. All of the platforms are pretty easy to find.
Excellent. I will put all of the information into the show notes, into the description, so you can go out there, find him, buy his book. Yes. Purchase it. Go out there and buy many copies. Yes.
Thanks,
no worries at all, Jim. Pleasure having you on. And I'd like to say thank you to you, my friends, my life warriors, who have stuck with us to the end of the show. Please stay well, stay safe, be awesome, be excellent, be fantastic. Be all the positive bees you can be in this world, and then some. Have a great day, guys. Yes. Peace. And we are